Although really it's only a beginning, because then we're going to go into the mission that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sent his Talmidim out on. So just to summarize what we said in so far, we opened this Mishnah, which is Mishnah Ches of Perek Sheni, with a statement that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai himself said, which was Im lemadata Torah habe al tachzik tova atzmacha ki lekach notzarta. That was his opening statement. Then we listed yesterday the 5 Talmidim who he had, and we explained the concept that these specific 5 Talmidim, they were continuing the path of their Rebbe, each one in their own unique way. We also mentioned the idea that they didn't have it within them naturally, but after they invested in Amelus and Shkeida v'Torah, then they were able to develop themselves, and each one developed themselves into something unique and different. And we're going through all of them now. Let's go through them again just briefly. So Rabbi Elazar ben Horkonos we already discussed yesterday. Bo Sud she'eino ma'abed tipa. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya Ashrei Yoladato. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen Chosid Rabbi Shimon Natan al Yerechet. Rabbi Elazar ben Rach K'ma'ayan HaMitgaber. And after he lists all 5 and their praises, Hu haya omer, then Rabbi Yochanan would say, Im yiyu kol chachamei Yisrael b'kaf moznaim, if you would place all the sages of the Jewish nation on a scale, then Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus b'kaf hashniya, and you would put Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus on the other side of the scale, machria et kulam, then he would tip the scale. That means Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus is greater than all the other chachamim, which is an interesting concept in general, that you're weighing up rabbis. Abba Shaul omer mishmo, and then Abba Shaul says, also in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Im yiyu kol chachamei Yisrael b'kaf moznaim, if you would have all the rabbis on a scale, the Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus afim ahem, and even Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus would be with those rabbis, Rabbi Elazar b'kaf hashniya, and yet Rabbi Elazar, meaning Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, would be on the other side, machriya et kulam, he would tip the scales, which seems to be a stira, seems to be there's 2 different teachings taught in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Tanakam in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is that Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus is the best, and according to Abba Shaul, it's the that Rabbi Elazar ben Arach is the best. And we can understand if that is a machloket, then what is the nukudat machloket there? How would we resolve such a thing? So, I want to go through it again now. These 5 statements, and this is what we're going to try and do, and this is going to be in line with what we did yesterday. If it's in line with what we said yesterday, that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was the source of all these 5 Talmidim, that means that each of them took an element of who he was, and they emphasized that element. And that's what we spoke about yesterday, how he said, these are my 5 Talmidim, that when you put all these 5 together, then it's a full embodiment of the shleimus of who Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was. As we said yesterday, that he got that shleimus from the joint Hillel and Shammai. So he made a statement initially, and it looks like all of these 5 Talmidim had a different emphasis, which they all took his statement into a way that was true to who they were. A little bit like when the Jews stood on Mount Sinai, and they all heard the word of Hashem, but each one had a unique chelek in Torah, tein chelkeinu b'toratecha, and therefore everybody hears, when they hear a rabbi speaking, they each hear that part which is in tune with who they are, which resounds with them. So the first part of the statement of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was, Im lemadata Torah harbeh, the emphasis being on, prerequisite being, you have to be learning a lot of Torah, and then what are you going to then do with it? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he pauses there. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, sorry about that. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, his focus, his message that he takes from his Rebbe, the part that he emphasizes and that he takes the message away from, is the Talmud Torah Keneget Kulam, is the having to absorb much Torah. It's not necessarily about renewing Torah, rather it's about taking in and taking in and taking in and taking in much Torah. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, he absorbs everything he can from his Rebbe, and his Rebbe then declares him to have absorbed all of his teachings. Now Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. So we asked the question yesterday, Ashrei Yoladato, how fortunate is his mother? And we asked the question, what's it going to do with his mother? And although we did give an answer, which Rashi quotes, which was that his mother asked all the rabbis of the town and the different Batei Midrash to pray for him so that she does get credit, but maybe there's something a little more here. So when we look in the Gemara, and we look at story, although we said that Stam Rabbi Yeshua in the Gemara is Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, therefore there is pretty much on every second or third page statements of Rabbi Yeshua. Even the Daf Yomi of today, there was a machlokes, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, our very rabbis who we're learning about here in the Mishnah. There was a machlokes in the Gemara today, now yesterday's Daf. So they appear often, but when you look for unique stories about them, things that make them not just their shita in learning, but also what seems to characterize them, there's one theme that seems to come up again and again and again about Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya in many Masechtas. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya seems to be that person who always goes out of his way to debate with people outside of the world of Torah in order to defend and uphold the Torah's view, and thereby making a Kiddush Hashem. When the minim would come and ask questions against Torah, the Chachamim, it would be Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya who would answer them. When the Matronita of Rome, when she came and she questioned Jewish faith, Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, he was the one who answered them. He was the one who went to Rome itself to discuss with the Caesar about the future of the Jewish nation. When the people of Alexandria had 12 questions against the Jewish nation, it was Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya who was the one who addressed it. And as part of the Hespedim that was said when Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya passed away, the Chachamim said about him, who now will address the Abikorsim? Who will we now have to answer them? Now it's an interesting thing that Chazal say that if a person follows the path of Torah and they're able to address negative things that go on the outside world, in other words, their public statement, what they make, then we say, Ashrei, how fortunate is the one who this one came from. It seems that it's not reflective of one's parents, their inner working. That's between them and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the degree that they make a Kiddush Hashem towards the outside world, that reflects on our parents. That's Yiddish nachas that comes to their parents. So Ashrei Yoladato is a type of a phrase you would say when someone not only is a Yirat Shamayim and they have a relationship with Hashem, where they're able to outwardly declare, publicly declare Hashem's name, defend Hashem's name, and make a Kiddush Hashem in public. And that was an aspect that Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya held strong. He was able to hold out against all the foreign winds that would come their way against the Jewish faith and defend the Jewish faith in the light of others who at that time were trying to knock us down. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Chosid. Now, it's interesting that it emphasizes that he was a Kohen. A Kohen is someone, if we go back all the way to Aaron HaKohen, a Kohen is someone who, the way that he relates is a way of Oheves Abrios or Makarvan LeTorah. Meaning that Aaron HaKohen's way, unlike Moshe, for example, who was the Dayan, who was teaching Din, was Tzedek, was strict law, Aaron HaKohen was going beyond the letter of the law. Aaron HaKohen was someone who was looking to make peace, even if it wasn't his place to. If two other people are having a fight, it's not his position that he has to go make peace between them. But he went out of his way, going beyond the letter of the law, to make peace between the two different people. That was Aaron HaKohen. And it seems like that becomes part of the genes of the Kohanim, that it goes through the eras, that Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, what he embellishes, what he represents, what he's learning from his Rebbe and taking that aspect on is Chassid. A Chassid is someone who goes beyond the letter of the law. Someone who's a tzaddik, from the word tzedek, justice, is someone who does exactly what needs to be done. That's din. Someone who is a chassid, not the modern day, the last 200 years definition of chassid, but when Chazal speak about a chassid, it's referring to, on Tanakh, when it speaks about a chassid, it's referring to someone who is already keeping the letter of the law, and then they, with a sense of love, like Aaron HaKohen did, they go beyond the letter of the law in order to bring goodness to the world. And that's similar to the bracha that the Kohanim make. When the Kohanim bless the people, their last word is bi'ahava, meaning the inbuilt trait of Kohanim is to go beyond the letter of that law and to relate to the world with not tzidkus, but with chasidus, with love, going beyond the letter of the law. So the aspect that Rabbi Yossi HaKohen emphasizes from his Rebbe that he embodies is chasid. Now, Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel is Yirei Chet. Now, we asked the question yesterday on this, that Yirei Chet seems to be something which is a very basic trait. Like we spoke about on Mishnah Hey, Ein Bor Yirei Chet, someone who doesn't know anything, has no sense of values, they can't be Yirei Chet, but an Amma Aretz can be. So why is it such a praise when it comes to Rabbi Shimon ben Natan al Yerachet? And I want to read to you here the Ruach Chaim's commentary on this, because he addresses this question. The Ruach Chaim says there's two levels of Yerachet. There's a basic level of Yerachet, where you're careful not to do any Averas. Then there's a higher level of Yerachet, and I want to read that together with you. Aval kan hakavana lebechina acheret b'yirat chet. Now we're describing a whole nother level within yirat chet. Shaya yareh mehachet atzmo. He was physically scared of sin itself. Como mi sheyareh uboreach minachash or mi'esh hasorefes. Like someone would be scared of a snake or a fire. Al zeh ha'ofen mamash haya beinav ha'avera. And that's the way that Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel viewed sin. I want to go into this point a little bit. We have senses that teach us how to relate to the world, right? Most people are not, some people are, but most people are not scared of cats. Because of their experience and other people's experience of cats, there's nothing ever negative that comes from a cat. There could be. When I was a boy, was scratched just over here on a cat, and I had a scar for a little bit, but Baruch Hashem, it passed. There are pictures of me when I was a boy with a little scratch over here. It has happened. But overall, people are not scared of cats. Why? Because of life experience. It's just a life experience that they've had. Snakes, people are scared of, either because of their life experience or because of stories they've heard of other people's life experience. Meaning, a snake is not inherently scary. If you've never seen a snake before, you've never heard of a snake before, you wouldn't be scared by a snake. You'd say, oh, that's interesting. Just like you would say if you would see a worm, just a little bigger. But because we have a background and we've learned things about it, then our learning about an item, I'm giving an example of a snake because I imagine that most people here have never been bitten by a snake, meaning you've never experienced a snake being scary. But you would still run away if you would see a snake just because of what you've learned. So listen to what's happening here. It's very interesting. You learn something, but that affects your emotion. A person could be petrified of seeing a snake, not because of an experience that he's had with the snake, but only because of the learning that he's done. He's learned things about snakes, and that causes him to feel fear when he goes and relates to that snake. So you hear the idea there? The feeling of fear comes from our not experience, but our learning about that experience. That's very interesting. Now, when it comes to halacha, we also learn halacha. And we learn that if you embarrass someone in public, it's akin to killing them. And we also learn there are some averos which are equal to denying HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and some midas which are equal to denying HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbos and getting angry, for example. So now, would you be scared of getting angry? Would you be scared of breaking Shabbos? You probably would say, I won't break Shabbos, but I'm not scared of it. I don't feel a panic. I don't feel fear. But then if I would ask you, are you scared of snakes? If you would see a snake, you would say, definitely. What's the difference? Both of them, it's things that you've learned. You've never experienced a snake biting you, and you've never experienced kares. Neither of the two. However, Baruch Hashem. However, both of them are things that you've learned about. And the way that you learn, it affects your emotion. So why is it that people naturally will be scared of a snake, but they won't be scared of breaking Shabbos? They'll be careful not to break Shabbos. They won't be scared of it. They'll have Yerachet on a lower level, meaning they'll take precautions to make sure they don't sin, but they're not nervous. And I'm not talking about nervous here in an unhealthy way, but like in a healthy way. Something is dangerous, you're scared. That's a healthy response to have. So why don't we have that? So the answer is, and this is something that we can contemplate and improve and work on, the answer is that things that we hear from other people, we believe, and things that we learn about in Torah, we somewhat believe. We align ourselves with, but somewhat believe. Let me just explain this idea clearly. If someone were to tell you that that snake is poisonous, then you would feel scared and you would run away because you trust that person. If someone were to tell you that eating this food, it's poisonous, halachically it's poisonous, then you wouldn't be scared of drinking it per se. You would just say, okay, I won't drink it. But you wouldn't say, quickly throw it away before. I remember once when I was in Shana Bet, I went for a Shabbos meal to a certain family, and the boy I'm talking about now is a Rebbe in a yeshiva. By that time, he was just in yeshiva at the same time as me. And they brought milchik ice cream to the table, at the end of a fleishik meal by mistake, and he being super from way frommer than his parents could ever possibly imagine that they could ever be, he obviously checked everything that came to the table all the time, and sometimes went to the kitchen to check up on the hechsherim of things. And he did his minhag, which didn't bring much shalom bayis to the family. He did it here again when they brought the ice cream out. But this time he was gratified in discovering that it actually was milchik ice cream. And they had, after a fleishik meal, and that proved his point why he almost always must check hechsherim of everything they bring into the home. So they said, okay, don't worry, we won't eat it. But they left it on the table. And I just saw him there looking at the ice cream. He couldn't focus on anything anyone was saying. He was just looking at the ice cream. And then he just broke the conversation in the middle. He said, could we take that off the table? Could we please? No, I don't know if that's healthy or not. He ended up being a big Talmid Chacham. He's written Svarim. He gives Shiurim. He's a Rebbe in Yeshiva. Baruch Hashem. I think his parents are happy about it. But that moment was real Yirechet, meaning he was actually scared. Now, I understand that he could go to an unhealthy place. I'm not discussing that. But he was actually scared of the thought that someone may come now to do an Aveira. There's something treif on the table, something which are forbidden to eat on the table, and he was scared of it. He was scared like me and you would be scared of a snake. So that means that just like a snake, you learn about it, and then it develops a fear within you. So too with halacha, if you learn about the consequences of the breaking a relationship with Hashem through breaking halacha, you could come to a place where you'd actually be scared. And it would be a real emotion for you. But like the Nefesh HaChaim says, it's a ma'ala nifla. It's not something which is easy to come by, but it's something which is very worthwhile discussing amongst ourselves to recognize that value. Don't think that it's something for big tzaddikim. You yourself do it when it's things that you've never experienced fear of, but you just learned about and you feel scared. So too, you could learn about halacha, you could learn about Yirat Shamayim, and you could come to a place where the same way as someone would be scared of being near a snake, you would be scared of being near anything which could lead to breaking halacha. So for example, a way that might express itself is the following. Let's say, for example, you finish a meal. Now, you start a discussion with someone else and they say, come and let's talk about it over here in private. Someone who has Yirechet wouldn't be able to get up of their seat until they're benched. They would be so scared that if they get up and walk over there, they might get involved in a conversation, they might forget to bench, that they would be so scared they would say, I have to bench first. And if the person says, I just want to discuss with you, but they would say, yeah, there's a snake here. Like, I'm scared of the snake. And not in an unhealthy way where they're breaking apart and falling apart, but in a healthy way, they would say, I would love to talk, but I just can't leave this seat until and if they set themselves any quota of learning, then they would make that so secure in themselves that they wouldn't be able to go to sleep at night. They would have a great sense of security. Now, it seems funny I said the word security, right? Because security, you wouldn't think with being fearful. But the truth is, if you don't have a sense of feeling heat, or let's say you don't have that sensor in your hand, that if you put your hand on the screen, you can feel that it's hot, then you should be scared. Because then, if you would come to put your hand on something hot, your hand could get burnt and you wouldn't be sensitive to it. If someone doesn't have sensitivity, that's where they should really be nervous and scared and not be able to function very well. But once a person has sensitivity, he knows that he has built in with him that if he goes near fire, he jumps away, then he can be calm and he can feel secure because he knows that he has built in within him a reaction which would hold him back from doing something dangerous. So too you can develop that towards halacha. If towards halacha, you don't really know halacha well, and you haven't developed sensitivity towards the negative effect of halacha, that's where you should feel insecure. That's where you should be a little bit scared, because you may come and burn yourself. However, if you've developed this trait of yirechet, where anytime you come even close to doing something wrong, you start feeling a sense of panic. I can't get into this situation, it will be dangerous. Like that reaction of not wanting to touch something hot because you have that sensitivity, then you can be secure. Then you can be calm because now you're not going to get into a dangerous area. One more story on this matter and then we'll move on to the next one. The Chafetz Chaim was selling his book. He would go around selling his book. And he said to the people, if you learn this book, then you can speak. So the people said to him, if we learn that book, we don't want to buy that book. If we buy that book, we won't be able to say anything. Because then, this is forbidden, and that's forbidden. Everything's forbidden. We won't be able to say anything. We're not interested in reading your book. The Chavetz Chaim, with his great wisdom, said to them, really it's the opposite. Right now, you can't say anything because you have no idea of the halachas of Shmirat HaLashon. That means anything you might be saying might be forbidden. So right now, it's forbidden to you to speak. I request, be on a Tanit Dibur until you finish the book. But if you buy the book, not because he was trying to make money, believe me. If you buy the book, then you'll learn the halachas of Shmirat HaLashon. Then you'll be able to speak. Then you'll know what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. And that same vein goes true with, let's say, checking fruits and vegetables for insects. If you don't learn the halachas of checking fruits and vegetables for insects, then that doesn't mean you're safe and you can be calm and you can just eat freely. Chas v'shalom. You could be transgressing 5 lavim every time you take a bite. Therefore, you shouldn't be able to eat anything of fruits and vegetables. Then you should be nervous. However, once you've learned the halachas and you're careful, you know that you won't put anything in your mouth until you've learned this date. Does it have to be checked? Just today, my 4-year-old daughter came into this room where I'm sitting right now, and she's with a date, and she said, "Abba, tivdokli, please, Father, can you check it for me?" That's amazing. She didn't try. I checked it; there was nothing inside, Baruch Hashem. But dates do often have about 1 every 2 packs of dates have. Well, that just was pretty. It's not so common, but it's pretty common. Right? Every 2 packs, there's going to be an insect there. Chas v'shalom. So once you've learned the halachas, then you can be calm. Then you can say, "I feel safe now." So this yireh chet is not a nervous sense of tension of, "Oh my gosh, what's going to happen if it?" It's not like OCD where a person then says, "Did I do it correctly? I'm not sure if I did it correctly. Let me go do it again." It's a very calming state because a person can say, "I'm so sure that I've built within myself a sense of not doing anything wrong, and I've set up healthy boundaries around myself that I won't come to do anything wrong, that then I can function like normal. And if it ever does happen that I get into a situation which is precarious and I may come to sin, I know that I can rely on myself, that I've got the magnon," not sure I say that in English, but the built-in system where I know that I'll move away from that. A very common example of this is looking at inappropriate things on the internet or talking to the opposite gender. People who don't have that sense of limitation, of boundary, of where they're entering a danger zone, they should be scared because they may look at something which looks innocent or speak to someone which seems like it's an innocent conversation, but where exactly is the end of that conversation? It could end up being forbidden. But if a person has a sense of yireh chet, he'll be to the point. He'll say what he needs to say in a formal manner. Yes, Mrs. Cohen, he won't call her by her first name. He'll set boundaries around himself and only say what needs to be said for the situation. And then he'll calmly move away and he won't enter into situations which are then difficult for him to find a way for him to get out of. Also with Shmirat HaLashon, he's aware, very careful to be aware of what's avak lashon hara. If he senses it being spoken, he just backs out of the conversation or changes topic. But he doesn't allow himself to get into the situation where, "Oh my gosh, I've started talking about this now. It's very embarrassing for me to step out. I need to be consistent with who I am and keep the conversation going." That's yireh chet. That was the level of Rabbi Shimon ben Netana. I want to pause here for a second and just say a pattern, which maybe, I didn't see this in any Rishonim, but it seems to me like there's a parallel here. The first pair of 2 and the second pair of 2 seem to me to be a spectrum. Let's look at that together. The first pair was Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus. And the Gemara says about him, actually he says about himself in the Gemara, at the end of Sukkah, he says about himself that he was always the first one in the Beis Medrash, he was always the last one to leave the Beis Medrash, and he never spoke Sichas Chulin. Meaning if you're thinking of someone who is Kol Kodesh, only words of Torah, wouldn't interact with anything which is outside of the worlds of Torah, then you would put Rabbi Eliezer as your prototype. However, what we just described Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania to be is the exact opposite. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania is someone who is willing and even the right man for the job to go and speak to Apikorsim, to speak to Minim, to speak to Goyim, leaders of Goyim, even to leave Eretz Yisrael to address the needs of the Jewish people, to speak to Goyim. 2 very opposing approaches. Let's pause now and go to the next 2. The next 2 also seem to be opposites entirely. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen Chassid Chassid is always someone who's working with the midah of Ava. They're relating to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by saying, what more could I do to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu happy? Mashallah ma'adav adomer. If someone who you greatly love and greatly respect would ask you for water, then if you're a tzaddik, you would bring them water. If you're a chassid, you would think, well, they're probably hot, and they probably would appreciate cold water, and you'll make sure that you'll bring them cold water, even if they didn't ask you for cold water, but you're thinking, what more can I do for them? How can I go beyond the letter of the law to do good things for them, to bring extra nachas ruach to that person? A love relationship is what Rabbi Yossi HaKohen represents, relating to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the spectrum of love, as opposed to what we just described, Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel being on the other extreme of that spectrum and serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a sense of great yira, a great yirat chet on the high level that the Nefesh HaChaim, the Ruach HaChaim described. So we at times have given one way of relating to this. I'm not going to use that one now. At times we've said you should go to one extreme and you should go to the other extreme, and then you should be in the middle where you know how to draw on each extreme. That's one model we've used a lot in the past, but that doesn't relate well to us here. Because over here, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is saying the praise of each Talmud as a praise, meaning it does seem like here it's healthy to go to one extreme. And therefore I want to describe a different idea, which I don't know if I'll get through all today, but I'll just say it very brief, and maybe not today, but at a different time, we'll go into it in more depth. There's a concept of everyone having a unique mitzvah or a unique midah, which is their unique entry to Avodas Hashem. The way you see this in the Gemara and Brachos is when they say, "B'meh erachta yamim." What merit uniquely did you have that enabled you to go to the long life or the next world? And each rabbi there says something which is pretty usual, pretty regular, not things which are very exceptional. Sometimes it's about making kiddush on a kos or wearing tzitzis, things which are pretty normal. I mean, they took them to an extreme. What does that concept mean? It means that there are certain mitzvahs or certain midas, which if you own them and you make them your own, that becomes your point of being extremely great. And I've given this mashal before of the Chazon Ish, but if you look at me here, if I want to lift up this pencil, I don't have to lift up the whole pencil at every point to make it go up. It's enough for me to hold it here at the tip and just lift up the tip and the whole pencil goes up. That concept, the Chazon Ish says, means you don't necessarily have to work on everything and be the best in everything. Rather, if you have one point that you become very, very great at, that becomes your entry point to greatness. Mashallah mahadav adomet. If you have someone who wants to give a great contribution to the world, so he doesn't choose every single area that he could possibly contribute to. He doesn't donate to yeshivas and to the lame and to save the dolphins and to producing the next sefer of Rabbi Ferber. He doesn't give every single donation that he could possibly give. Rather, he makes one charity his charity. That becomes his, in a sense, pet project. And maybe he does give smaller amounts to other areas, but that becomes his area which his heart lies in and he invests everything in. And when you have Rabbonim or Lahavdil doctors, usually you don't find people who their greatness is in being all-rounders. Usually you find Rabbonim and Lahavdil doctors who take one area and they own it. And their greatness, their contribution they're able to give to Klal Yisrael comes through them being big Bekiyim in Hilchos Shabbos, or big Bekiyim in Hilchos Eruvin, or in Hilchos Mikvos. If they would be all-rounders, they wouldn't have some big contribution to make to the Klal. But because they have one area which is very, very great, then they are able to contribute. So I was thinking perhaps that's what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was emphasizing here, that although in his personality he was an all-rounder, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was very great in Torah, and he was basically the chain in the Masorah through the Torah came through after the destruction of the Beis Mikdash. He was also someone who was able to go to Vespasian and to declare, save Yerushalayim, save Yavneh v'Chochmeyan. He did have the elements that these Talmidim then picked and chose, which elements they would make their primary ones. But the point here is to emphasize, I'm willing, me, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, I'm willing to praise totally opposite ideals. Someone who's only in the Beis Medrash and someone who's willing to go out. Someone who's serving Hashem through Ahava and someone who's serving Hashem through Yira. There's no preference in those areas. As long as you've made a particular derech in Avodas Hashem and you've owned it, that's become your path that you've excelled in, you can come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and worthy of praise for that. The final one is Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, and he is someone who, this is something that we speak about very often, about the idea of everyone having, again, their own unique chelik. He was someone who was a ma'ayan mitgaber, someone who is mechadesh, meaning maybe the other areas he had as well, but that wouldn't be his unique trait that we would signify him as his greatness. Rather, his greatness was that he never was satisfied with taking in information and hearing it at surface value and then passing it on in the Masorah to the next generation. But rather, he always had a sense of having to grind everything and understand it. And he would often come out with brand new ideas that would come out. Now, that by itself is not necessarily beneficial, because a person could come up with such chidushim, they're not based on what the halacha is. And they come with pilpulim, which become pilpulim of hevel. They come things which are very irrelevant. But once it's come on the basis of a great Masorah, it's emanating from a Masorah, it's very great. Now let's use that concept and go into the final phrase of the Mishnah. So the final phrase of the Mishnah, there's two ways in the Rishonim of understanding it. One way in the Rishonim, which many of them take, is that it's a machlokes. Tanakama heard that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was more in favor of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkunus. And this is a machlokes which actually appears in the Gemara in Horayos about in Torah, is a Sinai adif or is an Oker Harim adif. A Sinai represents someone who has a tradition, like from Mount Sinai, and he passes down the Masorah in a very solid way. Oker Harim is someone who any svar that comes his way, he smashes it, he grinds it until he comes up with something which is uniquely of his own. So the Gemara in Horayos, Daf Yud Daled, debates this, who is preferable, a Sinai or Oker Harim? And according to the Tanakama here, the Tanakama's view within Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is that a Sinai is preferable. Eliezer ben Hurkunus, who has the whole Masorah, who doesn't forget a drop of the Torah that he's learned, he's preferable. And Abba Shaul, his interpretation, his Masorah, his version of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is that no, Oker Harim is Adif. Now it's interesting because in the Gemara, they conclude that a Sinai is Adif, but that's referring to when you need a Rosh Yeshiva. When you need someone who's going to be a leader of the people, it's more preferable to have someone who's very well grounded and has true Masorah of all the areas, even if he can't be Machadesh, all the very great things. However, when it comes to your unique derech, then there's no one right way. And therefore, Rabbeinu Yonah doesn't understand like the other Rishonim. And the Rabbeinu Yonah here says, Shnei Tnaim Einam Cholkim. Tanakana and Abba Shaul are not arguing. Ela zeh medaber be'inyan ha'yediyah, v'zeh medaber be'inyan svara v'chidud. Each of them were true. Rav Yochanan said both. Rav Yochanan, when he was describing the midah of a Sinai, he said Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkunus is the king of being a Sinai. When he was describing Oker Harim, he was saying, well, you know who wins the award, the champion of being Oker Harim? That's Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach. And again, the same message as we just spoke about earlier. It's not that one way is right and one way is wrong. Maybe if you need a Rosh Yeshiva, there's one way that's right. But if you're asking who should you develop yourself to be, that's the question which, as we described yesterday, is not a relevant question to decide ahead of time. Rather, you start learning. And the derech halimud, which resounds with you, will speak out from within you. There are some people who their natural derech will lead them to be a Sinai, and Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai was greatly in praise of that. There are some people who their natural derech will lead them to be an Oker Harim, and their natural derech will take them to that. What's important for us here, and the message we can take from Rabbeinu Yonah, is that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying, I have 5 Talmidim, and I praise them all. It is inappropriate for anybody who has found his speciality in a particular area to go and start accusing or judging someone else in a different area. Those people who are the Sinais, it is not appropriate for them to say, all this pilpul shel hevel, they think they're so clever and they're showing off all their great lamdonas. Where does it get them? What about halacha? What about Masorah? What about what we need to do? They're making up things that weren't even true. It's inappropriate for them to say that. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai praised Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. However, those other people who are the lamdanim, they can't say that either. They can't say, What do they understand? Where is their thought? All they're doing is just quoting what their Rebbeim said and just bringing down something. Well, a tape recorder could do that. But what about their own unique thought? What about their own unique svara? Where's their own chelik and avodas Hashem? No. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai praised Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkunus. And therefore, our message is, there are many, many paths that avodas Hashem. Everyone will develop themselves and find a unique path. Sometimes one path will be the exact opposite of another path. It will be a polar opposite, love and fear, like we saw in our Mishnah. There'll be paths of only staying in the base medrash or going out there and relating to apikosim. There's no one right path. Rather, you develop your Torah learning, you will see naturally which path will take you, and you will have Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai behind your back, cheering you on and saying, you're my Talmud. Not my Talmud in everything, but the fact that you chose your unique derech and you became great in your derech, you're my Talmud, and I love you. יישר כוח.